This comes down to understanding who your employees are as people, because what's going to engage me in the workplace maybe isn't what's going to engage you in the workplace. But I think that if you have, again, that environment of transparency and really great career paths for people, so that when people are coming into an organization, it's not stagnant. There's growth, there's development, there's purpose there. Is your vision really clear? Are people motivated about why they're coming into the organization? I think that purpose, transparency, and growth are really important for engagement.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Recruiting Revolution Season 2. Our guest today is Careen Redman-Mattews, joining us from Australia. With over 20 years of extensive experience in people, culture, and recruitment, Careen is now co-founder of Humaneer, the first HR for HR app that combines human experience with artificial intelligence, which is quite a cool concept. We'll be exploring it in the questions ahead. Also, Humaneer's mission is to make the world like a better place for HRs altogether. So welcome to the podcast, Careen, and thank you so much for joining.
Oh, thank you, Nidhi. It's lovely to be here.
Great. To start off our podcast, so very first question is, can you tell us about your amazing journey? You've been in the industry for such a long time. I would love to know your experience so far.
Oh, okay. So I actually started my sort of people experience in recruitment in the UK. So I started in Edinburgh in Scotland, obviously with the accent. And then moved down to London and worked in London for a few years before moving over to Australia, to Sydney, where I moved more into the HR space. So my HR experience has been across multiple industries, predominantly tech and startup and scale up. The last few roles that I had were leading global teams in tech companies and deep tech, which was really exciting.
That is amazing. And, to move on with your experience, can you tell us more about Humaneer and, what inspired to co-found this initiative?
Yeah, so look, I think having lived and breathed the people space for 2 decades, oh gosh, can't believe it's been that long. I really understand what it means to be in HR. It's such a unique role, and we take an awful lot on. Our skills are just exploding at the moment with the expectations, etc. And so I found myself in a position where I was asking the question, where's the support for HR? Why is there no HR for HR? And that's really where the idea for the community came. And it's really just evolved since then. And we actually opened up the community on Monday. So we launched on Monday, which is really exciting. And we've built this with HR, and it's a place for HR to call home. It's a place where HR can upskill quickly, build their community, build their networks, join experts and think tanks, etc. And so for us, it was really about being that support place for HR so that we can grow and develop and have that kind of person in our corner when we need it.
Got it. So basically, it's an application where, HRs or people can join in and join the community, is it? And they can have and stuff like that? Okay.
Yeah, so where it is just now, we have the community, which is just launched, and the community has the power up sections in it so you can upskill quickly. You've also got all the community channels so you can communicate, chat, build relationships with HR people across the globe. And we also have expert think tanks where you can join and speak to experts. And we also have open source directories with lots and lots of information, podcasts, books. We'll make sure this podcast appears on there as well. And that's where we are right now. In the background, we're building our AI model, which we call MAC. And MAC stands for Machine Accelerated Learning. When we have got to the stage that we can integrate MAC into our community, that's when MAC will be the place that you can ask a question and it will give you the answers.
Got it. Would love to join the community as well.
I will make sure you have an invite in your inbox after this.
Amazing. as we we are talking about human resource altogether. So you've been in the industry for such a long time. So HR in 2024, must be a different ball game than it was back in 20 years. So what changes, have you seen so far, in your experience?
Huge changes, huge. I think the biggest change, if we look at that sort of span in 20 years, I think the biggest change has been technology. Obviously, there's been huge sort of strides in technology, but actually the workplace has completely changed as well. I think that the biggest catalyst for us was COVID and the pandemic. So I think that the last 5 years we've seen monumental change, and we're seeing it's happening really quickly now. So we've got economic change, technology change, social change, political change, environmental change, and all of that combined right now is completely changing the landscape of HR and the workplace. I think if you'd asked anyone 6 years ago if they were working from home, it would be such a small percentage of people that would say that they regularly do that. Now that's pretty normal for people to be in a hybrid or a remote environment. So I think that the last 5 years we've seen the biggest shift. But actually, I'm thinking back now to 20 years ago, and even LinkedIn wasn't really a thing, which is just bizarre to think about now from a HR perspective, because I know in talent attraction that can be a really, really useful tool. So yeah, there's been so much technology change, but also just the working environment. I think 20 years ago, we didn't talk about workplace well-being. We probably didn't have the same lens on DEI, etc. So there's been huge changes in 20 years. It's almost unrecognizable. Yeah.
Also, you've done recruitment for a lot of a whole lot of time. So what changes have you seen in recruitment, if you talk about?
Okay, this is going to make me sound very old, but when I first started in recruitment, we would pick up the phone, email. We would sometimes get email CVs. We would fax CVs. It just feels like a different lifetime ago. I remember, once I'd started in recruitment, I remember LinkedIn just started and it was really exciting. And we were all learning how to use it, etc. Now, when we look at recruitment, we're looking at AI integrations in recruitment and talent acquisition. We're looking at incredible ATS platforms and software. We're looking at tools that can really elevate the recruitment data and analytics from the HR perspective. But we're also looking at a lot of a lot of software that can really amplify the employee and candidate experience. So I actually think, again, when you compare it to 20 years ago, it's night and day. Yeah.
So how was LinkedIn initially when you used? Because when we used LinkedIn, when we started using it, it was everywhere. But back then, what was LinkedIn mostly used for? I don't think it was for jobs initially.
Look, I don't remember using LinkedIn for the first 5 years of my career. I actually started my recruitment career as a headhunter, so I would do search. And so a lot of what I would do would be picking up the phone, networking, getting to know people, taking them for coffee, understanding who they knew in the market, and actually manually mapping out markets. And now you can just jump onto LinkedIn, look at an organization and see everybody that works there. So it's just so different. Yeah.
That is true. Also, you mentioned earlier regarding the workplace, how it has changed a lot. So, according to you, what does it mean to have a good work? What, according to you, is a good place to work? What are some criteria or, perspective of yours?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question to answer, because I think having a good place to work from an employee perspective is really personal. But I think some really great guidelines around that are to have a place that people can show up authentically. They have purpose, they have meaning, they have authority and agency over their roles, but that the company is commercially viable. And I think that when you create a really great workplace, employees are working with the mission and the vision of the organization, and the organization is flourishing, as are the people. I think that that's a great workplace and a great place to be, but I know that that can look different for everybody.
Yeah, true. And what can an employer do to make sure that the place is good, love for the employees, and for their well-being? Like, what are some tips that you can give the employers?
Yeah, so I think that one of the biggest things employers can do to create a really awesome workplace is to have real transparency and clarity for employees. And that goes with everything. So people understanding what their role is, understanding where they've got agency and accountability, what the expectations are on them, and what the deliverables are, what the timescales on deliverables are, what the route to development is, where can they seek development opportunities. I think that it's that transparency piece. So when people really know what's expected of them at any given time and they have the agency to do that, I think that that's what makes a really great working environment.
Got it. Also, one of the things, could be keeping the employees engaged. Like in the current situation, I guess it is the most important thing because of course nowadays, the Gen Z generation or we can talk about the earlier generations where they are thinking of switching jobs and not often, because of course for valid reasons. But keeping the employees engaged is a big topic, in today's time. So what do you think is, the shift that companies needs to make sure that, the employees are engaged in the current workplace?
Absolutely. And look, I think this comes down to understanding who your employees are as people, because what's going to engage me in the workplace maybe isn't what's going to engage you in the workplace. But I think that if you have, again, that environment of transparency and really great career paths for people, so that when people are coming into an organization, it's not stagnant. There's growth, there's development, there's purpose there. Is your vision really clear? Are people motivated about why they're coming into the organization? I think that purpose, transparency, and growth are really important for engagement. If you'd asked me 6-7 years ago, there was a real piece in Techland where it was about the culture and almost that social culture within the organizations. But I think now it's much more purpose driven. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. Also, do you think that, startups nowadays, there are a lot of startups, coming, emerging. So, they are trying their best to make sure that, the culture is great. The focus is always on culture when we talk about startups. So, according to you, like, what are some key strategies, for the employers to build, like, effective people teams in a startup environment? Because in a startup,
yeah.
the people team is kind of very short because of the people, less. So the headcount is less. So, what are some strategies for a smaller startup, I would say?
Yeah, look, I could talk to you about this all day, but I'll try and summarize it for you. I think that you're so right. In startups, the people teams are so lean that you've really got to think about what's going to make the biggest impact. My advice would be to really get the basics right so that people within the organization know what the principles are, know what the guidelines are, know where to get information, and hold that information in a place that's relevant. So one of the biggest pieces I would do if I was in a startup as a HR person again is get the tech in place to be able to automate as much as you can, because the more time you can spend in the business with people, the more time you can spend with the CEO building strategy. That's going to be much more valuable than doing admin. So putting the tools in place to be able to do that is really important. That would be my first piece that I would do as a HR startup person now. Yeah.
You talked about tools. So it's like every other day there is a new tool coming in the market. So what are some of your favorite tools as an HR to use?
Okay, so this is really difficult because I think that we all have our favorite tools, but I actually think it's so organization centric what you need. So what I would say is when you're building out your tech stack wish list is to actually understand as an organization, what do you need for your organization to work right now, and then future proof that, and then use that to then decide what software you want. Because I do think that there's this tendency where we're like, we ask people, we're like, what do you like? And actually, we're not asking the question, what do we need? And I think that that's the most important question that you can be asking yourself, because what I've needed in every organization has varied, and I've implemented different HRIS systems, different ATS systems, because what we've needed for that particular company has been different to the other ones. Yeah.
And when we talk about ATS, so what is the company headcount, like minimum company headcount to use an ATS? Do you think there is such a thing?
I think it depends on your growth trajectory. So I've worked in an organization where I started and there was 20 people, but we had to hire 200 people. So in that situation, I wouldn't look at your baseline headcount. I would look at, well, how many people are we going to hire, and how easy is that going to be if we've got no ATS? So I wouldn't look at current headcount for an ATS decision. I would look at projected growth and scale of growth, and also if that growth is done on volume recruitment as well, because that will have an impact on whether you need one. Yeah.
Also, when we talk about startup, because we are a startup, so like, it's, a startup does not have enough funds or enough, they are not financially that strong to, purchase a lot of tools. That's what is like your strategy for, like making the work more efficient. If the maybe there are many companies who don't have that much of fund. So what are your thoughts on
that? Okay, so first and foremost, if you're a startup, my biggest piece of advice would be have a really basic Excel spreadsheet and use that as an employee register, and have every single employee that starts in the company and have their details, start dates, etc., so that you've always got a place of truth, regardless of which tech you put in place. So many times I've gone into organizations and they haven't had a basic document that's kind of got employee 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And until you have either the funding or the revenue to put a solid HRIS in place, you do need a place of truth. I've actually kept the employee registers going in the background, even with HRISs, so we've always got something there. But I would say that your HR system is probably one of your best investments, and probably the one that I would make first. Yeah. And even just a core one to keep everyone's data safe and to manage leave requests, etc.
Got it. And you mentioned that you are going to soon take help of AI for Humaneer, your intelligence. So, like, what do you think like AI can help in your organization? How is AI helping in your work?
Yeah, so AI, I mean, the possibilities are endless with AI at the moment. And I think that really looking at your workflows and your day-to-day administration and seeing, is there something I could be doing to build out GPTs or something like that? If you're able to in the organization, I would be starting to do that, because I think that the more you can reduce your manual administration, I think that the more time you're spending with people, and that's really important in a lean environment. Yeah.
Okay. So how is AI helping Humaneer?
Humaneer. So we embrace AI at every touch point of our business. And so we are actually building out workflow automations at the moment with GPT, etc. We are building our own large language model as well for Mac. So that's going to be a deep integration for us. But I think for us, AI is second nature now. And we're actually doing a lot of work in the community over the next 5 weeks to help HR understand how AI can help them in their day-to-day as well. Yeah.
So now AI has helped Recruity like so much. Like we are launching a new a whole new AI Recruity, where we're taking help of AI in shortlisting the candidates, like top candidates, and creating job descriptions and creating interview questions. So I think AI is kind of here to stay right now.
Absolutely. And I think that the biggest thing with AI is just you need to be really conscious of the bias that might be there, and also the output that it's giving you. I think it's really kind of being aware that it's a tool, it's not the answer all the time, I think is really important.
Yeah, that is. As my last question, in the years ahead, how do you see HR evolving?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I can tell you how I'd like to see HR evolving, which would be nice. I'd like to see HR becoming much more strategic within organizations. I'd also really like to see HR leaders stepping into CEO roles. I think that the skills and experience that people learn within HR make them exceptional leaders. And I think that the compassion, the empathy, the vulnerability that HR can bring to, CEO, COO, chief of staff roles is second to none. So I would love to see more HR people moving into the C-suite. That would be my wish for the industry. The industry as a whole, I would love to see it really leaning into the AI piece and becoming far more human-centric in the sense of day-to-day being with people, liaising with people a lot more and not stuck behind desks. Yeah.
That is so true. So yeah, Karen, that brings, the podcast as a conclusion. And, it was such an amazing talk with you. It was lovely having you on the show.
Oh, it was so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for having me. And I shall send you an invite over so I can meet you in the community. All right.
Thank you so much.